Hey, business owners and leaders, Rob Marshallonis here with LSP123. Normally, I work with businesses to help them increase employee productivity, but occasionally we work on how to handle a slowdown or a challenge or a transition or even a crisis in a business. I'm not sure what crisis or challenge you may be facing, but the big question for you is how will you plan and prepare and navigate that challenge so that you can emerge bigger, better, and stronger than before. As you know, there's very little we can do to avoid many challenges that come our way, but there's a lot we can do to control how we respond. And so what I've done is I've put together over 50 different issues and opportunities for you to think about when you're going through challenging times. And we're not going to get a chance to cover all of those now, but what I've done is I've pulled out several of what I believe are the most impactful, the most important issues or opportunities for you to think through when you're going through a challenge. So let's start with number one. The first situation that I'd like you to think about is scenario planning. Scenario planning. Look, it's obvious that we cannot predict the future, but what we can do is think through different scenarios that might be applicable to the situation you're going through right now. And I'd like to give you a few details to think through this situation planning. The first thing to think about is who would you involve in your planning for these situations? Would it be just yourself? Would you include others? I probably recommend that you include others, people who are strategic leaders on your team, maybe some other partners that you have worked with, maybe some outside experts who can give you some help navigating through the scenarios. The other thing to think about is what are the risks that are involved with each scenario, right? So, the future may play out a little bit better than you thought, it may play out much worse than you thought, but what are the risks that come with each of those so that you can appropriately think about those and plan for them, right? Who would be involved in each different scenario? Would each scenario involve the same number of people, or might some people be more needed in a different situation? What resources would you need for these different scenarios? Would you need resources of cash or of borrowing or support from vendors or I'm not sure what it looks like for you, but what other support would you need? What other resources would you need for these different scenarios? What measures can you keep an eye on to know which scenario is playing out? There's probably some things that you can watch for, some leading indicators that would give you a better heads up as to what scenario is actually playing out for you. And so I'd encourage you to think about that. And finally, when it comes to scenario planning, what are the opportunities that can come from each of the different scenarios? I mean, be thinking ahead on this and planning. Look, scenario planning can take a little more work. It'd be far easier to have one scenario that if you knew it was going to play out and that's all you'd have to think about or prepare for. But that's often not the case. And so one way that you can navigate a situation where you need to think about the future but you can't predict it is to think your way through different scenarios. So let's move on to issue or opportunity number two. And that one is negotiation. In the midst of whatever you're going through, how might your negotiating power have changed? It's possible your negotiating power has been weakened through the current circumstances, but it's also possible that your negotiating power has improved or is strengthened. That might apply to different stakeholders that are surrounding your business. It might apply to your vendors and suppliers. How might you have stronger negotiating power in the current circumstances? I'm not sure what that looks like for you. How might you be better able to negotiate maybe with employees? Occasionally we're in negotiating circumstances with employees, and there are times when we're in a weaker position, times we're in a stronger position, but how might that have changed? And finally, just as an example, how might your negotiating power have changed with customers? There's some marketplaces where the customers really have an upper hand in terms of dictating what they want from the marketplace or from you as a supplier. But there are other circumstances where you have more negotiating strength in those situations. I'm going to give you a quick story of a negotiating example that I've run into recently. Recently scheduled a moderately expensive VRBO getaway for a few nights. And this was a 4-figure rental. And so in the midst of some environmental changes, I wasn't able to participate in this rental, and neither was the landlord. And so I was in a cancel situation. The problem was with the original lease on the VRBO was non-cancelable. So by all indications, I was out. I was out everything. Excuse me. This 4-figure sum was going to be a full loss. And so what I did was I just sent a simple email to the landlord and said, what are your thoughts? What might we be able to do about this? And interestingly to me, the landlord came back within a day and said, well, given the circumstances, what I'll do is I'll allow you to push out your stay and rebook at a different time and give you a credit. I'm not sure exactly what I was going to do. I pushed back again and sent another email and said, well, would it be possible for you to issue a full refund for the rental? Now, the contract was non-cancelable, so I had no idea what really was going to come of this. And so interestingly, the landlord came back and said, well, what we will do is we'll not only allow you to reschedule your stay, but we'll also give you an extra free night. So not too bad. It was more than I was really expecting to get. But still not being sure if the negotiation was complete, I sent another email and said, now, given the circumstances, wouldn't it be possible somehow to get a full refund? Well, the landlord, the property owner, got back to me and said, look, we'll give you two options. I'll let you reschedule the stay with an extra free night, or I'll give you a 50% refund if you'd like to cancel completely. I thought about it. I figured we would go with the rebooking and the extra free night. And the point being is, had I not asked, had I not reached out and negotiated this circumstances, who knows? I could have been out a whole lot of money and nothing to show for it. So, as we all know, I would encourage you always be aware of your negotiating strength. But in certain circumstances, as you well know, you don't know how the negotiation will play out if you don't make an attempt to reach out and to ask.